Hi, everyone. Glad that you could join me. We're going to get started here in a couple of minutes. Hi, RJ. Hi, Patty. Hi, Sharice. So we're going to get started here in a couple of minutes. I've got this set of 4 cards that we're going to make, and we're going to be using the Cartabella Summer Mega Pack. I'm just going to get rid of that banner. There we go. It'll be gone in just a second. So this is what we're going to be using today. And what I was sent the 6x6 Mega Pad, and it's ideal for cards because it's all downsized prints. And like I say, I've been into this, so it's kind of falling apart, but I see some more cards. I just don't know what they're going to be right now. So when I get them made, I'll make sure I post them. I'm thinking too, I might make some kind of a little folio, like a 6x6 folio or something with this. I just don't know what the idea is going to be. Hi, Alice. And then Tammy sent me the chipboards and frames along with it. So I sort of incorporated that in some of these cards. And I got the enamel dots, which are awesome. And then she also sent me this stamp set. So it's great for all those just because cards that you might get rid of this noise. It's great for all those just because cards that we might have need for in the summertime. I used one of the stamps in here today, but there's thank you and there's thanks. Hello, we love summertime. Thanks a bunch. Life is better in the summer. Choose joy, bloom and grow. Like there's so many uses for these. Hi, Alice. Hi, Diane. So that's sort of where I'm going with this today. And I also use the Nouveau. Hi, Jean. Thanks for joining. Thank you. I use the Nouveau Crystal Glaze that Tammy is selling in the store. So let's get started. And we're going to start with this one first, because as far as I'm concerned, it's probably the hardest card in the pile. And I'll show you in a second. So I'll give you measurements as we go. So I think I'll go like this. I'm going to put these over to my side. So this actually is a little shaker card. This is one of the frames from the frame chipboard. That was a chipboard piece. This comes out of, in the 6x6 paper pad, there's a whole sheet of summer, like subway words, I guess is what I'm going to call it. So I pulled out that one out of there. I used a couple of little enamel dots, and then I just wrapped some not natural, it's the I'm going to call it ivory. It's this that Tammy sells in the store. So I use that. You're going to need hi Lillian, you're going to need some kind of a corner rounder if you want that. I use my bow maker. Yeah, so let's get started and we'll see where this takes us. But we're going to do this one first because it's going to take the most time. And yeah, before I spill the stuff again. That is the only thing about all this shaker stuff. I have spilt that stuff so many times. Yep, it's my nemesis. And you'd say, how can you spill it? You have it in a nice little tray. So I just want to talk. This is just stuff I had in my stash. Hi, Jan. It's just a mixture of a couple of different shakers, fillings that I had. Tammy has some in the store. They would work perfect for these cards. It's just, I just went into my stash, pulled out some of my shaker stuff, and probably some of you have a pile of it. You don't need a lot. Like maybe there's a teaspoon here, maybe. So I'm just going to put it to one side before I make a mess with it again. So the other thing I should tell you today is that, of course, all these cards are the A2 size. So I've already got my bases all cut. So I've cut 4. I cut them at, let's start with this measurement, 5.5 by 8.5. And then I scored it 4 1/4. And then we're going to score. It's nice to see you here too, Lillian. I'm going to fold on the score line. Hi, Brenda. So glad you could join us. Give it a good burnish. And this is 110-pound cardstock. I haven't got any of Tammy's 110-pound yet, but that's coming with my next. Hi, Tanya. It's going to come with my next order. So I want to give it a try. I'm sure it'll work just fine for the card bases because you want something heavier. I know some people say, oh, I can just build it up with layers, but every time I try that, it always ends up being too front heavy for me. So that's just my 2 cents on that. So let's get into this card. So of course we have our base layers. So the cardstock I'm using as my accent is, I believe, the navy blue, no, denim blue. The artisan denim blue is what I'm using. And of course I cut that at 4 by 5 1/4 because remember our card itself is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And when I make cards, I always like to have 1/4 of an inch, not the 1/8 of an inch. And then our pattern paper is 3 3/4 by 5. And that's going to be what the measurements is on every base layer and pattern paper is how I'm going to say that. So we're going to get started. And what I'm going to do, oh yes, and on this card that's where I used this twine. I wrapped 5 rows of it underneath. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm kind of hoping you can see it there, just as a little bit of texture to the card itself. And it's easy. I promise it's easy. And hopefully I'll give you a trick or two that you can use moving forward. So let's get this pattern paper glued to its base. I'm going to start with that. So I hope everybody is enjoying their Friday. And happy Memorial Day to my American friends, because as many of you know, I don't live in the US, I live in Canada. So it's just another weekend for us, but I know this is a very special weekend for you. It's a time when you pay your respects to all people of your military service. And I think that is awesome that you recognize their service to your country and to the world for that matter. So around the edges, I inked with a gray instead of my typical brown. And of course, I'm going to make a mess because that's what I do when I get glue in my projects. So there is our layer. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to use some of my dry adhesive. And if you notice on the card, it's not right in the center, it's down a little bit. So maybe I could say it's up about 1.5 inches from the bottom of this card. So that is what I'm going to do. And that paper doesn't really have a direction on it, which is kind of nice. So the reason I'm doing this is it's just so that I can catch that twine that I'm going to be wrapping around my card. And it kind of just keeps it in place. Now, before I do that, don't forget one part, or I'm going to be doing like I did yesterday when I was creating these cards, is we also have a layering piece that goes on the card before we wrap the twine. So the layering piece, the pattern cardstock is 2 1/4 by 5, and the actual pattern paper is 2 by 5. Yes, they are exactly the same length. I'm just going to put some adhesive, and again, I inked all my edges with a gray. A blue would look nice. Black, if you dare use black. I always end up with black everywhere, so that's why I try to stay away from my black. I use it for stamping sentiments most of the time. But I very rarely ink with it because I like to wear it, or my project likes to wear it. So again, just adhere those 2 pieces together. Now the only thing with this card is because it's a shaker element, it's quite thick. So this might not be a card that you want to stick in the mail to somebody. It might be something you'd want to hand deliver. If you are going to mail it, I am assuming in the States it's the same as in Canada. It's probably going to cost you more postage. And I would make sure that I had padding on the top of it so that when they're processing or get them, I don't know if you guys, can you do hand processed mail down there? I'm assuming you can. That might be a little safer for it because then it won't get scrunched. But I think when you go to all this work, maybe hand delivering this card might be the best option. Just my 2 cents on that. Oh, this layering piece is going to lay on top of the base. And I probably have it in from this side, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch. Hello, Miss Sally. Thank you for joining me today. Here I thought you would be out at the beach. Or is it not beach weather on the East Coast today? So we're just going to mat this layer on top. And like I say, about 1/4 of an inch, give or take, away from the left-hand side of the base. And then we're going to wrap our twine around it. And really all I did is I'll measure it. 1, 2. I'm going to have about 4 feet of this stuff to wrap. It might be a little bit more than I need. But because I want to wrap 5 times, I want to make sure I have enough. Oh, is it terrible weather there, Sally? That's too bad. It's kind of yucky here too today. It's not really, it doesn't make me think that in a couple of days we're going to be into June. It just doesn't. It's just not that nice here. So again, we want to keep this to the bottom half of the card. So all I did is I just attached my twine on my little sticky double-sided tape, and then I just started wrapping. And I'll go back when I got it all wrapped and I like that I have my 5 layers or my 5 wraps. So I'm going to tell you in a second, probably 4 feet was too much. And it looks crooked now, but we're going to straighten it. So really, you know what? That's all I'm going to have too much. Oh, Tanya, then I think you got nicer weather than we've got. It's like 17 Celsius, so I can't really convert it right now into Fahrenheit, but it's not very nice out there. It's kind of overcast, and I honestly would love it if it would rain, because we need rain so bad here, or we're going to be in a forest fire situation this summer. So all I'm doing is I'm just laying the twine I wrapped around, and now I'm just pushing it apart a little bit, kind of what I want when I'm done. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to the back and I'm just tacking it down on that. I'm going to, on this double-sided tape, sorry, I was trying to read and talk at the same time, not a good idea. I am just going to wrap or lay my backing of my score tape back over it, just because I'm going to lay this card down because we're not quite ready to adhere it to the base. Or I guess we could. Yeah, let's do that now, and then it's done. Because everything else is going to be going on top of these layers. So I should have thought about that. But that's okay. That's why when we do lives, you get to see the good and you get to see the other things that go on in our world. So I'm just putting some liquid adhesive. And I'm going to be fairly generous with it because remember, we're putting a shaker element on this card. And it's going to add a little weight. So that would be the other reason. you know, postage is a thing. It's going to add to that. So I'm just centering it so I kind of have the same amount of border around all four sides, keeping in mind that, you know what, this was not mass produced someplace. This is being created by your wonderful little hands. And you could put charms on these cards. I just kind of kept it simple because, you know, I know not everybody has all that stuff, and I want to try and make cards that everybody can make. I love it when I see you guys take them to the next level. But for this project, or for my purposes, I like to keep them simple. So I'm going to set the base up here for a second. I'm going to bring in the elements that we're going to be using to create. I'm going, what are these strips for? I'll show you in a second. Our shaker element. So the first thing I should tell you is that this came out of that frames and chipboard frames. That's where it came from. So it's a piece of chipboard, so it's quite thick. Well, is that for me, Sally? It's starting to, but it's a very slow process. I don't want to talk about it right now. It just makes me upset. So this one is one of the smaller frames, and that package comes with some really, really big frames too that you could adapt into card making by just making your base to fit one of these frames. And maybe I'll do a quick video on that of just making the card to fit one of these frames, and then we'll make a homemade envelope with it. We could do that in another live. So I also pulled out of my acetate this small piece, and I cut this piece down to 2.5 by 2.5. The piece that's going to be on the back is a piece that is 2.5 by 2.5. So I made it exactly the same size as my acetate. And then all I did for my little summer fun is basically I only used a piece of paper that's about 1/8 of an inch bigger. So just measure out whatever sentiment you're going to use. You could stamp a sentiment on a piece of paper and do exactly the same process. And then this little guy came out of the chipboard frames, and I thought it looked quite nice when I laid out my card. So let's get going. I inked all the edges with the gray again. I'm going to remove the backing off my dry adhesive. I know some people do use the liquid glue to do this. I find that it moves around too much and then I'm frustrated. So I tend to stick with the dry adhesive. So all I'm going to do is pick it up. So I've got my frame with the turned upside down. I'm just centering this. And I could have cut this just a little bigger. But for whatever the reason is, I thought this was big enough. And it'll work just fine. So now we've created the window so that our shaker stuff that I'm going to leave sitting down there for right now so I don't throw it all over the place like I did shortly before I went live. I was not happy at that moment. I cannot tell you where I bought these. They are strips. You could achieve the same things with the rolled adhesive. I just like these strips because they just make it easier, because I'm going to use 2 layers. And all I'm kind of doing here is I am using the outside edge of my acetate sort of as my guide. And just to keep this easy for you guys today. Oh, that would be awesome, Lillian. Yes, because we Zoom tonight. Yes. So if you don't know what we're talking about, is 2 to 3 Friday nights a week if you buy the Zoom pass that Tammy has in the store, you can come on and it's like an online, it's kind of like an online crop, right, Tanya? And it's just a place to be, to craft with fellow crafters. Tanya's there, I'm there, Sharice is usually there, Lillian is there sometimes. I think Sally's even made it there. And it's just, hi, Aura. Nice to see you. It's just a place to come and just be with fellow crafters, but you're in your own craft room, got your own stash. It's actually a really nice time. And it certainly has been nice for me. So all I've done is I've gone around making sure that I don't have any big holes. Now, if I was doing this offline or off camera, I would go back and piece these to use them up again. But for the sake of trying to do this in somewhat of a timely fashion, a virtual crop, RJ, that's an excellent way to say it. And we do it 2 to 3 Friday nights a month. And it's awesome. So just go buy your Zoom pass. And if you haven't done that already, and then all you need to do is then ask to join the Zoom group. And I will approve you. And then you get the link, because that's where Tanya posts the link, is in that Facebook group. And yeah, the rest is sort of, it's just a nice place to be. There you go. Tanya says it better than I do. So, and the reason we're doing 2 layers is we want to make sure we have enough height so that when your stuff is shaking, it moves freely. That's all that's about. And like I say, I can't even tell you where I bought this from. I will try to remember to ask Tammy if it's possible for her to get this in the store, because it sure comes in handy for these shaker cards. And shaker cards are so popular right now. So I'm just going to put this away because I don't need that anymore. All right. So now that we've got that done, I'm going to carefully pick up my shaker mix that I created. Carefully. It's a key word for me. And this is virtually, let me put the pin back in my glue, because then when I'm going to want my glue, it's going to be dried. And virtually, all I'm going to do is just dump this in here. And don't ask me where I got this from, because I can't tell you that either. I've had it a while, and it's just handy when I'm doing my shaker mix. And see, this stuff is crazy. Like, it just gets everywhere, and it's got lots of static in it. So now I'm carefully, without bumping my shaker card, now that I've got the mixture in there, because that'll be the next thing, I'm just removing the adhesive from the back, trying to do it somewhat carefully, because this stuff has a mind of its own. I don't know if you can see it flying there. Now, my backing is also 2.5 by 2.5. And this does have a direction, but my frame doesn't have a direction. So we're going to be okay. And I am just going to center it on top of that foam and lay it down, making sure that I have it secured. And that is basically all there is to our little shaker element. Easy peasy. It's so easy. It is. And they look so cute on cards. But again, like I said, keep in mind that this is going to add to the weight of your card. And it's also going to add height. And I know here in Canada that once you start getting thicker, they really ding you for the postage. So now all we're going to do, this is where these strips come in. So I cut 2 strips. They're about 1/8 of an inch wide. And what I want to do is I want to glue these around the outer edge, just so we don't see, what I don't want to see is I don't want to see this, the white foam. And I am going to get my thinnest, no, I'm going to use liquid glue. That's going to work, and it's going to go the fastest. I'm just going to add some of my liquid glue to the back of this 1/8 of an inch, and I just cut a random strip. When I did this one, I had actually forgotten to wrap it with the blue pattern paper or blue cardstock, and I did it while it was attached. This one I'm going to be smarter, and I'm going to do it before, and I can have it basically kind of in one long piece. I might need to get a little bit more depending on how far this is going to take me. And I'm just running it around the edges of my foam just to hide the raw edge. And I should have had it just a little longer because now I'm going to have to piece it. Oh well, it's what it is, right? And it just gives it that nice finished look. Because I always say I want my card to look better than Hallmark. And we're just going to take a little of this one. So it's like 1/8 of an inch. And I just cut it in the cutter. I never throw away any of my cardstock. I wait, and when I'm making cards, most of the time, I pull from scraps for my piecing. So we're going to cut this because we don't need it to be that long. Like so. And if I had used one piece, then we would only have one seam, but we have 2. So basically, all I did is I just wrapped that 1/8 of an inch piece of pattern paper around the outside edge of my foam to give it that finished look for when we put it on the card. Just get rid of this and that. I need that. Don't know if we'll need scissors, but we're going to start with my craft space kind of clean. Ha ha, I say. Okay, and then we're going to add some adhesive to the back of that little word. And this is where I'm going to pull in my tweezers. So, and I just equal around the sides. And bring the base back in. Now the difference this time is this base is not as big, or this shaker is not as big as that one. So it's going to change things up a little bit, but I think we're going to be fine. I think I like it like there. Just looked like I didn't have, it looked like the adhesive wasn't, the acetate wasn't all the way touching, but it's just fine. So I'm kind of placing it more to the right-hand side of the card. I believe this time I'm going to lay my flower down there and my words of wisdom up there. Maybe not. Maybe I have to put my words of wisdom down here this time. And again, like I say, this is what it's all about. It's all about figuring out what you like, what works for you. Yeah, I think I can be happy with that. All right, so we're going to put some adhesive on the back of this. You could use dry adhesive if you wanted to. I'm going to use the liquid. And again, I'm just closer to the bottom, closer to the right-hand side. And we're going to have to just hold this for a second to give that glue a chance to adhere. You can open it and give it a tender burnish on the inside. And like I say, these cards, thanks, Sally. These cards, I think, would be great just because cards. And I think right now we could all use a just because card. So I'm going to do that. I wonder if I like it more on the angle. Me and my angles. No, I think I like it. I like it kind of hanging over a little bit for some reason. So I think that's how it's going to be. It's just like the way we're looking at it now. Now, I have this great big roll of very thin adhesive tape that Tammy does sell in the store. It's like 108 feet of this stuff, and it is amazing stuff. Hang on here a second. Something's going to hopefully, seriously, give me 1 second. I just have to go close the door. My little robot that vacuums my house. There you go. My little robot that vacuums my house is getting ready to vacuum again. And some of you know all about my little robot and how much I love it. And it was going to come in here. We can't have that happening. These, Sally, you have no idea. They are not straight, but thanks. So let's get back to this. This is foam tape that Tammy does sell in the store. It's like 108 feet of the stuff, and I love it. It is my go-to. I do have a little thicker one, but this is the one I tend to go to the most because it just gives a little bit of dimension, but not a crazy amount. So again, I think I'm going to let it hang over the edge. And I think I'm going to let it hang. Just looking at this going, which way do I want this again? I think right there is where I want it. I'm letting it hang over on. No, it's not singing to me. Let's see if I can lift it without wrecking things. No, Sally, never. I love it when you can join me. Sorry, I got to pull out the undo because if I don't, I'm going to wreck something. Because I didn't like what I did there. Let's get the lid back on this because it's pretty strong stuff. And I only use it when because I'm too picky. All right, let's try this again. I want it there. There, now I'm happy. All right, and we're going to put this guy. That's what I was hanging onto this little piece of foam tape for. Let's move you over there. The only thing about this foam tape is the sides of it stick to everything. When you're, I sometimes have it stuck to my sweater. It's just what happens. But that's okay. That doesn't affect how it's used. And we're just going to do this like so. Oh, I really like that. That turned out nice. So same idea, just a different size frame. So it gives you a little different look. But thanks, Tanya, for posting that because it's amazing tape. And that will flatten out here as I push on it a little bit more. So there's card one. And really, I said it was going to be our longest card, but I bet it only took us about 20 minutes with me having everything cut. And you could make your frames depending on how good you are with an X-Acto knife. I want to add a couple of enamel dots to this once I find them. But I think this time where I want to put my enamel dots is I'm going to put them up here, because it seems like I just need something in that upper corner. So I'm going to take this tool. You know what, Sally? It's just everybody does things in a different way. You're okay with that. I could not survive if I didn't have my ruler present. I would not survive. I use my ruler many times. Like when I say I'm going to just kind of freehand something, people that know me will go, "Did she just say that?" I think we sat at each other's table a couple of times at Retreat, Sally. So there we go. There's card number 1 finished. Love it. So we're going to set these two aside. And now I'm warming up, which is a good thing. Get this off. We're going to go to card number 2. And again, it's a pretty easy card because I actually made this card last when I was making these samples. Yeah, like I say, rulers are to me very important. Hence why I have 2, because I'm always losing one. Hi, Debbie. You snuck in and I didn't know you were here. So this is card number 2, and I made this really flat, really simple, with the idea that this would be a great card to send to somebody. This particular cut apart that is part of that part of this paper pad, because maybe I should show you these. So in this paper pad, it comes with some tags, and these are all great for cards. And there's those words that I was telling you about. Comes with these. They're like 1.5 by 2. And then it comes with all of these little cut aparts. And like I say, lots of them. Oh, and this one too. Like this has got a ton of cut aparts in it. Great for cards. And great for those summer cards, just because cards, just to say hi to somebody, just to check in with them. You know, that's where I was going with these cards. So there's card number 2 that we're going to make. So I'm going to set that aside. And my second card is the same but different, because I'm using different cut aparts and a different piece of pattern paper. I'm going to give you all the measurements again. So remember, the base pattern paper is 5 1/4 by 4. The piece of pattern paper that goes on top of that is 3 3/4. Yeah, just give me 1 second, Tanya, by 5. The name of this collection is Summer. That's it. Just Summer by Cartabella. And it is in the store. So that's the base. And then all I did is is it the back side of this? Yeah, the back side of this was stripes. So I cut a piece of that. So the pattern paper is just slightly less than 2, about 1 7/8 by about 2 7/8. And then our piece of cardstock that's going to go behind it is 2 1/8. So 2 1/8 by 3 1/8. And again, I inked all my edges. And then as far as my little cut apart, I didn't think it was straight enough on both sides, so I cut it down a little bit. And then all I did is I just did my mat behind it to fit that. But maybe that doesn't bother you. If it doesn't bother you, use it as it is. It was just bugging me a little bit, so I had to fix my problem. So let's glue these pieces together. I'm looking at this and I'm wondering if I want to put some ribbon on this, more ribbon on this card. Because I'm thinking maybe this card could use some ribbon. So you never know. We could kind of add ribbon to this one. So there is no right or top or bottom to this paper, or left or right to this paper, which is kind of nice. So I'm just kind of centering it. Making sure that I sort of got that 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch, you know, I guess it turns out to be an 1/8 of an inch when you get it all the way around. With a good burnish. Then we're going to glue our smaller pieces together. Thanks, Tanya. And Tanya, can you look and see if you can find the chipboard frames and the enamel dots? Because that was the other two things I used in this collection. I believe that's, oh, in the stamp set. That is so nice of Tanya to do that, because then it makes it easier for you guys to find. And remember, if you haven't already subscribed to my YouTube channel, it's All Things Paper by Bonnie. I would appreciate that. Even though I am having a little difficulty right now. Somehow I got locked out of my Google account. And let's just say I'm waiting 28 days to see if then when I try to get back in, it will let me, because I read someplace if you do that, sometimes you can get back into your account. I'm hoping. A little frustrated right now with that, but we won't talk about that anymore because it's just going to make me upset. So there's our base. And what I'm thinking of doing is I'm thinking of putting some of the seam binding. And the two colors of seam binding I use for these cards is I use this coral that Tammy has in the store, and it matches really nicely. But then I was looking for a blue. Don't know the name of this one. It's almost like the denim. So I'm not sure what the name of that seam binding is. But I'm looking at this and I'm going, I think I like this one with this, because I'm going to be putting that there. And this is going to go in behind it. And I think what's going to happen here is, don't know yet for sure. See, this is my creative process when I'm making cards. I think it's going to be something like that. And then I'm going to tie a little piece of seam binding around this side. Thanks, Tanya. That's awesome. So let's just put these two to one side until we get it glued onto its base. No, we don't want to do that yet. We want to do this first. Don't be gluing something on. Yeah, I'm thinking what I want to do, and I'm thinking it's going to be the coral. I'm really liking this. I want it on top of this back piece of, or this back element, and then I want that element on top. So we're going to glue this one down first. Hi, Nancy. Yes, there were 4 items that I used, Tanya. I don't always see everybody getting in or on. And if you've come in on YouTube, because I don't know if I could. I guess I could use my phone and I could see the comments over on YouTube if you've come in that way. So basically, I'm just bringing it down about 1/4 of an inch from the top of the card, in about 1/4 of an inch. Look at Sally. I didn't measure. I do sometimes just go for it. Not too often, though. And then I'm just going to take some of this coral because I want to wrap it behind. I don't know, a piece that's maybe 6 inches. And I'm just going to wrap it behind. I think there's where I'm going to want it. So I'm just going to lay this back over because this is my process. You are getting to see what I do when I start creating cards. And it's kind of almost in the middle. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold it in place. And I'm just going to flip it over. Again, I like to use dry adhesive for this. Some people will use the liquid glue or liquid adhesive. I find that I just feel better when I use the tape. It allows me to move on faster. And I just added the tape. going to lift this up, and lift the piece of backing up on the other side. And then I'm just going to wrap it around, come back this way. I'm eyeballing it again and wrap it. And if I'm happy with that, which I am, and then this is going to go something like that. But we're going to pop this up. So let's move this one out of the way because we're not using the blue right now. I looked at that card yesterday and I said it needs something else, but was tired. I had been making the cards and I went, I don't know what it needs, so I'm going to move on. So let's put some foam tape on the back of this one. Clean off my spot a little bit before I have it so crowded you can't see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to put a longer one in the center. That's the nice thing about the foam tape. So instead of using 2 in the center or the little dots, this gives you the opportunity to just use 1. And this foam tape is not the really, really thick one. This is like, I think it's like 2, hang on here a second. It's like 1 millimeter thick. So it just gives you a little bit of dimension. Doesn't make it so high that when you take it to the post office, they say to you, you know what? Yes, I do know people that use the ATG tape when they're making cards. I think it's because I just don't feel that I have enough control. And I usually use liquid glue for most things that I'm gluing down. It's only for the things I want popped up. And if you don't have foam dots, you could use a couple of layers of scrap chipboard to pop things up with. I have done that sometimes. So I'm just kind of in about 1/4 of an inch from the right side, up about 1/4 of an inch from the bottom, something like that. Oh, I like that. And then I'm just going to take, I've just taken about, I don't know, 5 inches of the seam binding. And this is the coral that Tammy has in the store. And really all I'm doing is I'm making a faux bow. I'm just going to tie myself a little once I get it out. And once I'm kind of happy where I want it, something like that. I wanted it closer to the edge there. There we go. And then with my scissors that are only meant for ribbon, just going to cut. And I'm going to cut. And it gives you that illusion of a knot, that it's tied. But it's not. It's just, it's an easy bow. So we're going to get the base. Give it a good burnish. Add some adhesive to the back of this. Give me 1 second. There we go. Add some adhesive to the back of this. And again, you could use your ATG gun to adhere. I'm actually going to get rid of some of this seam binding. And I'm not using my good scissors now because I get glue all over it. There we go. Just don't need that much overhang. And keep going. And make sure your card's going to be turned the right way. And lay it down, centering it top to bottom, side to side. You could put a just because sentiment on the inside of this card. And give it a good burnish. We're going to turn it open, like so. And I'm going to get some enamel dots. Get my little tool here. And I'm going to put one here. And I think on this one I'm going to use a little bit smaller. And I'm going to take one of these. And you could put glue on the back of these if you wanted to. Hi, Jean. And there's our second card. And you know what? I think it looks nice with the bow or without the bow. It's totally a personal preference. So there's card 2 finished. And now we're going to move on to our card 3. And card 3 is got lots of elements on it. It's got some circles going on. It's got a strip. It's got a rectangle in the base. So we've got quite a few things going on. So let me give you some measurements for this. So of course the base itself measures 4 by 5 1/4. The pattern paper is 3 3/4 by 5. So that's the base. And then the square element, which is this piece right here, the base for that is 3 1/2 by 3 1/2. And the pattern paper is 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. This little strip that goes on top of this square, the pattern paper is 1 inch by 5. And the pattern cardstock, I should say, for this one is 1 1/4 by 5. And our circles, so the bigger circle, I just used the punch I had. It is 2 1/2, and the actual pattern paper is 2 1/4. The smaller circle is, I believe, 1 3/4, and then this is 1 1/2. Now, and then I just used 2 of the small tags and cut around them. I wasn't too fussy about how I did the top of them because they're going to be tucked in underneath everything and you're not even going to see them. And then I made a bow, and we can talk about the bow in a second. So just let me put this on the glue first, because I know a lot of people are always very unsure about stamping. And I just wanted to touch on that again because that's what I do. I just have a scrap piece of white paper here. I have this squishy, you could use a mouse pad, just something that's going to give you a little bit of squish when you're using your stamps. I just have it mounted on one of my acrylic blocks. And I'm using a black. It's just a VersaFine black onyx ink pigment. I ink my stamp up, and I do that by taking my stamp and putting it down on my ink pad. So this is stamp to ink, not ink to stamp, because ink to stamp is when you take your ink pad and then bring it to the stamp. For this, though, I'm good with this the other way because it's a small sentiment. Then I'm just going to lay my piece of white cardstock, and this is just a scrap. I don't even know what it is that I used here. And I just am lining it up, setting it down, and then I'm not rocking the stamp or anything. I'm just holding it in place for, I don't know, 30 seconds, just to give the ink a chance to absorb into the paper, because that's what I always find is why your image after you ink or after you stamped doesn't look crisp, is you haven't given it that little bit of time it needs. And then I lift it off, and there was something on my stamp, so of course that transferred over into my inking. So let's give it a clean, and we'll try one more time, because those things happen. I have laying in this little bin beside me, and it's full of other stuff for this project. So So I'm just doing it off camera. We'll try one more time so we don't have a, and again, it's just set it down, hold it in place for a couple of seconds, 30 seconds, whatever you feel like. Just don't stamp and lift. That's what I'm trying to stress here. And hopefully I won't have those things hanging around it. Much better. Still some guck on it because I didn't really clean it with anything wet, but it gives you the idea. And then what I would do with this, I would set it aside. I would create this whole card, and my very last thing I would do is I would come back and punch this out, because you want to give your pigment ink time to dry. And when you get too fast or you're in a hurry, and even the dye inks can be like this, when you're in a hurry and you want to punch it out or die cut it, that's when the ink ends up everywhere. If you can have the patience and the time just to set it aside and let it dry on its own, that's when you're going to have the most success with stamping. So I'll climb off my soapbox now about stamping, and we'll go back to gluing all these pieces together. So let's get started here. So we're going to glue these 2 layers together. So I hope that helps someone with their stamping challenges that they have. I know when I learned that trick of just not stamp and lift, stamp and stay. So I guess we could say, remember the 2 S's. Stamp and stay. That's actually a really good way to remember it. All right. So let's give it a good burnish, making sure that any glue is cleaned up. That's 1 layer. Let's move on to number 2. And again, center it on the piece of pattern paper, cardstock. I had it right the first time. Sometimes. So anybody got plans for this long weekend? Like I say, here in Canada, we had a long weekend last weekend. It was our Victoria Day. Glue on the little rectangle piece. And remember, this piece, you're only centering it left to right, top to bottom. Now, my top is on my left. They are exactly the same height. So I'm just kind of lining it up. And that is the other reason I like my liquid glue. And I'm noticing I'm a little short. So hopefully that's not going to come and bug me here in a second. So I'm going to be cutting this off because I don't want to see that. And hopefully, like I say, when I start layering this, everything's going to work out fine. So let's keep going. We've got 2 more layers here. So I'm going to do the sentiment. Now we're going to do that last because that's what I told you we're going to do. There you go. Barbecues are wonderful. Mind you, we pretty much barbecue all year round here at our place. 1, because, well, it doesn't get that cold where I live. I won't say that too loud because I know some places it gets really cold in the wintertime. So there's the 1 layer adhered together, and now this last layer. And here it comes. So we just want to center it. So I'll just take my smaller burnishing tool, wiping up the ink. And when you use the pigment ink, when it dries, it's permanent. So let's just get this back out. bring the card over. So this square layer, I adhered right to my card base. Probably about 1/4 of an inch from the top, maybe a little bit more. And then I just sort of centered it side to side. So let's put adhesive on the back of it. I don't know if you can hear in the background that noise. My cat has come into my office / craft room / studio, whatever you want to call it. And she's decided she's going to eat. So hopefully you can't hear her crunching. And there we go. Varnish. And again, I'm going to use, because I want to pop up this little rectangle piece, find the end of it. And I just think that when you pop things up like this, you give a little dimension. Little adds to the card, because I find when a card is just flat, it's just that, it's flat. I sometimes use even a thicker foam tape, but today I'm just going to use this one. I'm going to cut just a little bigger piece for the middle, something like that. Take off the backings. And more backing. And just keep going with this. And I'm just putting it over to the side, 3/4 of an inch, give or take. With this striped paper, it kind of helps you lining things up. There we go. Now we're going to take the circle with the strawberries on it. And I'm just kind of positioning it more to the left-hand side of the card, more to the top of the card, because this little sentiment is going to go something like that when we're all done. So I'm going to flip it over. I'm just going to put some pop dots or the adhesive strip. I might be putting 2 layers. I just don't know yet. Just going to see how it feels when I have it. You know what? I think I'm happy with just the 1 layer. Okay, and we're going to put glue on this side, because this is going to be adhered to the actual rectangle mat that we put down. You guys are very quiet. You guys working with me or just watching? Something like that. There we go. And then, like I say, this hooray is going to go more to the right-hand side and not right to the bottom, because remember, these 2 little tags, we are going to be tucking them in up here like that. I want to make sure that I can see my oh sweet, so sweet. And I want that one sort of over on the bit of green rectangle. Something like that is what I'm eventually going for, but let's get this glued down. So I think I would be happy just with adhesive on the one side. That. And find out here pretty quick if we need to have this popped up more. No, I think I'm going to be happy with that. Right about there. Get the backing off of it. And something like that. Like I say, every time I make cards, they're just slightly different. So they're going to tuck in. They're supposed to tuck in. except when you have your adhesive in the wrong spot. So let's just give it a little tuck up. I'm just taking my pokey tool and the foam dot that I had put there that was getting in the way of this. I now have it under control. It's going to be something like that. And we won't see any of this because this is where the bow is going to go. I'd like to be able to see the So Sweet though when I'm done. So some adhesive, and I'm going to attach them together. Well, wrong direction. I want to be able to see my So Sweet. So just whatever you seem to like. You could do them one at a time too if you wanted to. And I'm going to be happy with them right there. So now adhesive on the back. Tuck these guys up and underneath. Something like that. And then this is where I am going to use my Nouveau Crystal Glaze. So it's similar to Glossy Accents, but I just prefer it. I don't have the problems I have with Glossy Accent of the bottle always being plugged. I'm just going to hold that for a second. And I've had this bottle forever. It goes a long ways. And if you're wondering how I made my bow, I use this handy dandy little bow maker that Tammy sells in the store because I have hands that don't really want to cooperate. And this allows me to make bows the way I want them. So if somebody wants me to show you how I make a bow, please let me know and I will do that. So there is our card number 3. And all we have left to do is attach this card to our base. And if you end up with a little bit of glue like I have that's seeping out the bottom of the card, I have a paintbrush that is my glue brush that I use to sort of wipe the glue away when it gets where I don't want it to be. So we're going to add some adhesive to the back of the base. And we only have one more card to do. And then you can make these cards. You could take one as a thank you card to one of those barbecues you're going to this weekend. How about a card and a bottle of wine? That's a good one. Okay. And the stamp says, hooray for summer days, if you can't see that. And there it is. I'm just going to open it and give it a slight burnish because what I don't want to do is I don't want to bug that ribbon. So there is our card. Number 3. Same exact layout, just using different papers. And in the end, I wasn't able to see the So Sweet. Oh well, it's all good. And our last card for today. So again, this has got lots of layering going on. It's got some ribbon around it. It also has that faux bow going on. And I'll get the pieces out that we're going to use to make this card. All here. So there's the ribbon. And then we've got the card base. Again, the cardstock was 4 by 5 1/4. The pattern paper is 3 3/4 by 5. Then our layers are 2 by 4 1/2 for the cardstock, 1 3/4 by 4 1/4 for the pattern paper. It's just a piece of solid green. The next layer has a cardstock of 1 3/4 by 3 3/4 with a layering piece of 1 1/2 by 3 1/2. And then our little element that comes off of one of the cut aparts, it measures about 1 1/2, maybe 1 5/8 by 1 7/8. And of course, then the little piece of cardstock is 1 3/4 by just slightly over 2 1/8. And they're all inked. Let's put some adhesive on the back of all the pieces and then we'll do some assembly. And again, once you have your design, changing the elements is the easy part. Because I designed the cards yesterday, and that took me a couple of hours because I'm always going, oh, but I like this better. But today when I went back and was cutting this paper for the class, I probably had everything cut and ready to assemble in 45 minutes, give or take. You know, and that was with a couple of interruptions here and there. As I'm sure my life is like your life. It's interrupted by things going on in your house. And we've only got 2 more of these. And this particular piece gets centered top to bottom, side to side. And like I say, that's where I like the liquid glue because it gives you time. And the last piece. And when we're done this card, we'll be done. And we made these cards in an hour and probably an hour and 20 minutes by the time we're all done here. And I guess if we weren't talking, it would have gone even faster. Okay, and burnish it. And again, we're just going to close this up. I'm going to get out my dry adhesive. Don't think I'm going to need those. And I kind of put this again closer to the bottom. Not using my little ruler. I know it's here on my desk someplace, but I don't see it right at the moment. Give this a little burnish. Then taking a longer piece. And it's probably a piece that's about 6 inches long, give or take. It's more like 8 inches, but 6 inches would be fine. I am so glad that you've enjoyed the class, Brenda. That's what it's all about. So again, except when you take the backing off, I'm going to hold it up. Might even have enough here that a little higher. So maybe up 1.5 inches from the bottom of this card, give or take. And I'm just going to cut this piece off now so I can use my good scissors. And if you've never looked at all the seam binding that Tammy does have in the store, it's every color in the rainbow. That's all I can say. And she's always getting new colors. So let's do our layering. So this layer is going to go over to the right-hand side. I've kept it in about 1/4 inch. It's going to get adhered right to the card base. And like I say, it's centered top to bottom, side to side, something like that. And burnish. And then we've got this smaller piece. And all we're doing with these pieces is this smaller piece is going to be centered top to bottom. And I'm going to say I'm over about 1 inch from the left-hand side, but I'm going to put some pop dots on both sides. Just going to double check that if that is what I did, which is what I did. So you make the card and sometimes you can't remember what you've done. Thank goodness you can look. A little bigger piece in the center. Some people say I use too much foam tape. I like to make sure I've got coverage. What I dislike is getting a card and it's falling apart before I even get it. So I want my cards to stay together forever. Just taking off the backing off the score tape or the foam tape. And again, like I said, I sort of centered it top to bottom. And I'm probably over about an inch from the left-hand side. I'm eyeballing this as I go. Something like that. It's probably about a half an inch, maybe a little less or a little more. And then this piece is going to go, I'm going to put this piece a little closer to the bottom than I did with this original card. Or maybe not. No, I think there is where I want it. And again, we're going to put some pop dots on the back of this card. Once I find the edge. And I'm not sure I'll have a project next Friday. I'm going to start a new project. I'm going to be working with Nature Lover, I think, from Prima. I have an idea floating in my head. And I just have to get it organized. But I have my July retreat project to get finished so I can get my cutting guide and pictures in for that event. I'm adding a little bit more seam or foam tape, and I'll show you where I'm adding it to. So I've just doubled up my foam tape on the right-hand side of this little tag because when I laid it down originally, it felt like it was going to be floating on the air. And I wasn't liking that. So this is going to go something like that. Yes. And then here's our little tiny piece of coral seam binding. Hopefully this piece is long enough that my fingers can get under it and pull through to make the bow I want it to be. And again, you just pull it tight. And then I just take my scissors and I just cut it to whatever length I think I'm going to be happy with. And that time I cut that one a little too short, so we'll fix it on this side by cutting that one a little bit more. And then you end up with your bow. And I want to put some enamel dots up in this corner. But I think I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use those light pink ones this time. Or I think maybe I'm going to do this. I'm going to use several different colors. Like so. And then we just need this base. And then we can say we're done with these cards. And we made 4 cards in an hour and 20 minutes with me talking and showing you everything at the beginning. And then having to go close the door, because that's what lives are all about. You get to see the real life. and center it. Burnish it. Just be careful when you're burnishing it, you don't catch a layer. And then just take it from the inside and burnish a vein, and you do something like that with whatever was on my, who knows. And there is card 4. So just let me get this out of the way so I can lay all the cards out here so you can see them. So there's one of our cards. There's the other 2. And then the 2 shaker cards. So I hope you enjoyed our fun Friday. Awesome. Well, I hope, Lillian, these inspire you to make some amazing cards. You do amazing work, so I'm sure you will come up with something that is just stunning. So thank you again for joining me today. Remember, it stays recorded. If you haven't joined my Facebook, not my YouTube channel, please subscribe, and we will see you in my next video. I hope everybody has a great day and an awesome long weekend. Stay safe and have fun. Take care. Bye.